Cool. It's recording now.
Okay, yeah, I was asking, how do you feel about the latest monthly update? How did you see the community sentiment, Eric?
Michael. We have a D5 for everyone. Hello. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, D5 for everyone. It's here. Okay.
Yeah, welcome D5 for everyone. Very, very good, active community member. Nice to see you here. Yeah, the monthly update was really good. Touched on a lot of points, and I think there's been some questions afterwards, which we can now have the opportunity to talk about, which is really great. But yeah, looking good. Nice progress. Again, more partners being listed. Love to see it.
Mic off. Mic on.
My microphone disconnected there for a second. You can hear me now, can you?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was going to say, on this update in particular, I mean, there's a lot of development that's going on that's centered around USB, and we're excited to see things moving forward in that regard, especially now that it seems like there are no strong decentralized stablecoins at the moment. Would you like to speak a bit to that, Brian, Alex?
Alex, I think you can take it away there.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Yeah, so at the moment, just to conclude my thoughts on this.
While you collect your thoughts on that. Oh, no, go ahead. I just wanted to say welcome to everyone joining.
Yeah, welcome everyone. Yeah, so at the moment, we will be employing a model that is crypto collateralized, but also has the option of being collateralized by other stablecoins, and that is to ensure stability initially. But in the medium to long term, we are planning on moving to a model that is not pegged to USD, but is stable against USD, and that will allow us to have much less dependency on it would allow us to significantly minimize any remaining elements of centralization in the design. And then after that, there's some other entities we have with regards to how to further decentralize it. So I think, yeah, we're kind of adopting a progressive decentralization philosophy there. I think it could be a good capital asset for our lending platform once it achieves a certain level of liquidity. Should be very, very good.
When you say there, Alex, particularly what are you referring to?
USB, the question.
Yes. Okay. So I think it's worthwhile.
I think I lost Brian.
Go ahead,
there.
Carlos.
No, you were cutting.
Okay. Okay. So I'd like to add one or two things just to what Alex was talking about there. And that, first of all, that was a good question about the USB, and particularly touching on the points of censorship resistance and decentralization. And there are various aspects to any DeFi platform, but particularly ours, in particular relation to ours, that the Fringe finance platform has a good opportunity to remove or to increase its censorship resistance. And to that end, I've penned an article that talks about censorship resistance, and particularly in relation to the Fringe finance platform and the various components of that. It goes through the actions that we have taken and that we will take that are on our roadmap to further increase the censorship resistance. So that's all part of the ongoing plan there. And I think in the next week or so, I will release that article so the community can have a read of that, see what they think, and see that we're I believe we're going in the right direction because there has been quite a number of things, particularly over the August timeframe this year, that have emphasized the necessity to ensure as much censorship resistance as possible because, of course, DeFi's prime value proposition is its censorship resistance. Sadly, we need that given the traditional finance space is all about censorship, and if we didn't need that ability to circumvent the censorship, then there would be no need for DeFi. So DeFi certainly has its use case, it has its core value proposition, and to that end, we're looking very closely at all the elements of the platform that can be tailored and refined to maximize that censorship resistance, given there is activity from authorities to let's say, be problematic for the DeFi industry. And so we're doing everything that we believe is necessary. So wait for that article, and I think it'll give a little bit more detail.
Alex said something very interesting in there, and I just wanted to pick his brain a bit further when it comes to that. You said stable against USD, but not pegged to USD. Would you care to elaborate there? I think that's pretty interesting, especially for community members that might be hearing this for the first time.
Yeah. So initially, we're designing USB to be both stable and pegged to USD. But in the like medium term, we plan on having it only stable relative to USD and not pegged. And like people generally use those terms synonymously, right? Like as if they're the same, but there actually is like a subtle difference. So like if it's pegged to USD, it means that you can expect that it will always like revert to one USD, like in terms of the price of the stablecoin. Whereas if something is stable against USD, it basically means that its variance, like its price movement relative to USD, will be minimized, but it won't. There's no like guarantee that it will like revert back to exactly one USD. It like might like change its value relative to one USD very slightly over multiple years. For example, maybe over like the course of 1 year, it might go from $1 to $1.02, and then over the next year, it might go from $1 to 98 cents. And so that is like a property that is necessary to have in order to achieve significantly higher decentralization. Like in order to like minimize dependencies on various centralized like components, and basically to make the platform much more resistant to various attacks that might be carried out on like these other dependencies by like governments, for example. And so yeah, it's quite interesting. Like a lot of people find the idea of stablecoins that aren't pegged to USD kind of like very unintuitive. But I think that like really it's not that different to what people experience with like their currencies, because like if you hold USD, the value of USD, as I'm sure most are aware now, it fluctuates, and generally it fluctuates in the downward direction over the course of many years. And so really, in a way, these unpegged but stable coins are actually better than USD because they can actually appreciate relative to USD. Like they can actually increase in value relative to USD and also decrease in value, but only very slowly. So you like at a maximum, you'd expect it to like deviate by maybe a couple of % over the course of an entire year. So basically, it's like it's almost pegged, but it's not quite pegged, and that gives it like I could go into detail like exactly how like that provides certain advantages, but basically it means that it can have 100% decentralized collateral, like completely decentralized collateral, rather than relying on any centralized collateral assets.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because ultimately it comes a bit of there's trade-offs in life. I mean, that's the way, unfortunately, the nature of life. And some people may consider a non-pegged stable coin, so it's relatively stable, but it's not necessarily pegged to another asset, particularly the US dollar. They might consider that slightly inconvenient. However, a position can be taken that it's far more convenient than having your stablecoin censored and then confiscated by a centralized authority. So these are the trade-offs that need to be considered in this, and it's worthwhile considering these different models of stablecoins because they will become more and more prevalent as censorship increases on the centralized stablecoins. And there are models out there, and I think Alex can talk more about this, but for example, Reflexify is an example of one of those non-pegged stablecoins, and there's quite a lot of literature on the way that works, and that is just a good example, but Alex might be able to refer to other examples based on options. But anyway, Alex, if you've got anything to add there, please feel free.
Yeah. I mean, so like, yeah, our primary competitive advantage over Reflexify would be that we support many more collateral assets than Reflexify supports. Because at the moment, Reflexify is very limited in terms of what collateral assets it supports, and as a result, it doesn't. It's like it has trouble attracting users and also borrowers who are required in order to bring the stablecoin into existence. And so we would have we would like be offering the ability to mint these stablecoins using many different collateral assets, using the same methodology that we employ in the PLP platform to facilitate that, while still without having any dependencies on any centralized assets, which, for example, DAI has dependencies on. So yeah, I think that's like the primary way we would differentiate ourselves from Reflexify. And there's like various other stablecoin models I could go into, but they'll take you like 20 minutes to explain, and we're not immediately looking at going down that route. But there's some potential future avenues to like explore there. Quite interesting.
Yeah. So the long and the short of that is we're considering all of the things that need to be considered to maximize censorship resistance, and the platform will continue to take that route so that people can freely use it without censorship and those kinds of restrictions.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't think I mean there are experiments that have gone through in the past. I don't recall any specific names, but there have been experiments of doing this in the past, and I remember one in particular. Also, don't remember the name, but that went incredibly crazy on the upside. So this one stablecoin ended up appreciating a lot and losing its use case as such because it just went crazy on the upside. Are there any mechanisms that can be set in place to avoid such a thing?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'll let Alex talk, but I'd just like to introduce just very quickly. They're bad design, and so we're taking quite a lot of effort to ensure that we focus on things that are good design and ensuring that the way we design our things avoids those kinds of issues. Some of those inverted commas stablecoins that have crashed and burned in the past, and as you say, Carlos didn't fulfill their requirement to remain relatively stable. It could have been, were quite evident to many analysts looking at the model of those stablecoin that they are not scalable and they're not viable in terms of fulfilling their purpose. So yes, they come to market and they perform in an erratic manner, but many people are quite aware that it was very likely that those tokens would perform in such an erratic manner. But over to you, Alex.
Yeah, so basically, the way this design, which we will eventually implement, like in the medium term, we're not immediately implementing it, but it's like it is on our roadmap to implement it as the design for the USB stablecoin after the first version has been released. The way it will prevent the price from appreciating above the stablecoin peg, which is obviously very important because if it appreciates above the stablecoin peg, then it kind of like there's no guarantees it will stay there, so it's really not a stablecoin at that point, as you mentioned, Carlos. And so the way we prevent that is by charging interest to stablecoin holders if the price appreciates above the peg. And luckily, there should be like very like stablecoin holders do not need to pay interest in the vast majority of cases, as that should be enough to cause the price to not deviate above the target, right? Like, it should very quickly bring it back down if it does appreciate above the target. But yeah, basically, like, there will be an interest rate that will be charged to stablecoin holders in the case that the price does appreciate above the target, and that will result in stablecoins becoming more expensive to own, and therefore will result in reduced demand for them, resulting in the price reverting back to the target. And as more capital is allocated into the ecosystem and exists to take advantage of any opportunities where there's interest being charged to stablecoin holders, that will result in the price of the stablecoin being very easily correctable and like being very consistent at the target price. Like, initially, there might be high variance, but in the medium to long term, once that has been deployed, it should like be very stable at the target price, because whenever interest is charged to stablecoin holders, that interest that is being charged to them is being paid to the borrowers, and the borrowers are like the kind of minters of the stablecoin. And so therefore, what it will do is it will incentivize people to mint more stablecoins, right? Because you're getting the stablecoin holders to basically pay people to mint the stablecoins. So effectively, what that does is it increases the supply at the same time as reducing demand. So it kind of like does both things at the same time, and therefore, by virtue of increasing the supply and reducing demand, you are going to be very quickly causing the price to revert back down to the target price, and therefore, it should really not remain above the target price for an extended period of time at all. And so, yeah, that's like the mechanism. But it's a very, very good question.
I think that's a really good short description of that. But overarchingly, what that is just employing proper game theory dynamics to ensure that there is that incentive compatible design that results in the various actors participating in the platform operating together to achieve the outcome sought by the game. So it requires something that those stablecoins that have failed haven't considered, which is the proper game theory dynamics.
Right. Yeah, that's very, very good points. I once again just want to say quickly, if you guys in the audience want to ask a question, say something, feel free to just raise your hands digitally and I'll get you up on stage. Last community calls highlight where to talk to people in the community. So yeah, you're more than welcome to come and talk about anything. But yeah, thank you for the in-depth answer on what constitutes good and bad design, Brian. I think, and this is a conversation I was actually having with Eric very recently. People do not think of USB as a lending market yet. They tend to. There is actually a lot of confusion in our community surrounding USB, and that speaks to the need on my side particularly to put out more materials to inform about that. But yeah, in the end, it's a game theoretical mechanism, if you want to call it a fancy name, that helps lenders, that helps borrowers mint their own stable coins. And that's possibly one of the oldest primitives in the crypto ecosystem. I wanted to ask you as well, since we're originally, when we conceptualized the USB platform, we were thinking about borrowing heavily good pun there, from DAI. Has there been any progress in how we might deviate from DAI now that there has been more development towards the platform?
Yeah. Initially, Alex, I'll let you talk about this, but in a nutshell, yes, initially the model is going to be, or is currently based on DAI, but as Alex alluded, there is a variation to that will result in a less censorable or more censorship-resistant model. Alex, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've touched on the solution we want to work towards, which is the model that allows for interest payments to be made between stablecoin holders and stablecoin minters, depending on whether or not the price of the stablecoin is above or below the target. That's like the model we want to work towards. At the moment, we will not be employing that model like in the initial release, but that is something that we have like plans to work towards. Like it's a very similar code base to that which we are currently working on, so it should not require major modifications. I think it should be like relatively easy to implement, I'd say, in terms of switching from our current design to the new design. And that should be like ready. Yeah, like I don't know, in the medium term, I'd say.
Yeah, very good. Now shifting the topic a little bit, and this is just me speaking out loud. I think next time, if we're gonna keep on times that are, I mean, our team is pretty distributed, so it could be good to collect questions beforehand, just to capture as many of them beforehand, and not. Yeah, in order for people that are not able to join to issue their questions. Anyways,
just on that, is there anything that comes to mind from people having visibility of the community? Hang on. Visibility of the community forums. If there are any questions that are floating around there that are worthwhile mentioning here, shout out.
Yeah, but we was getting to the same thing. I wanted to ask Eric if there were any questions that he saw after the monthly update around the community that he thought were worthwhile bringing up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if it's a worthwhile one bringing up, but it's a two-word question that's been asked a lot. When stake?
Okay, the staking platform is live on mainnet and in production, and so the aspects that need to be put in place prior to launching it or making it available for users is the definition of the staking programs. And we're working through that at the moment. So let me speak very briefly about that to give the community a bit of an understanding. So the staking programs ultimately are aimed to achieve the goal of increasing adoption, to foster adoption and to help scalability of the platform. So they provide various incentives both to bootstrap the application as well as to provide various incentives throughout the life of the application. And of course the first aspect of that will be bootstrapping the application, and primarily that will involve incentivizing lenders, and through incentivizing lenders, that indirectly incentivizes borrowers, and so those are designed to increase adoption. Now, the approach that will be taken for that will be a phased approach, and what phased approach means there is we've got a really challenging market environment at the moment, so the market will have a certain appetite for adopting a new platform en masse, and we need to recognize that in the staking programs that we establish. So what we're doing now is deciding and designing the appropriate magnitude of each of the phases, or more to the point, the first phase in particular. And what that means is no one wants a platform. We want to effectively use the capital that we have available. And the rationale for that is we don't want to waste that capital and therefore create an unsustainable situation that results in a lot of capital being used that is intended to support the growth of the application or the platform over time. We don't want to waste those resources unnecessarily in such a way that doesn't result in the overall aim, which is to increase adoption. So it will be a test and learn process where the first phase, we will be able to gauge the behavior of the market or the response from the market of the initial staking program, and that will inform the subsequent phase of staking investment that the platform will make. So it is a process that needs to be well considered, and it's certainly not a case of, hey, we've got a staking platform, let's just throw whatever staking rewards, unrealistic staking rewards that we want on that platform, and hey, here we go. It needs to be done properly, and I think a lot of people will quite rightly recognise that there are a lot of dumpster fires that occurred in the DeFi space early on with staking programs, where they just threw, let's just call it on the face of it, unreasonable, really high rewards to stakers that burnt through a lot of capital and ultimately achieved very little in terms of sustained adoption for the platforms that were exercising these staking programs. So our approach, we're quite considered in all of this. We want to ensure that not only our platform is properly audited, properly designed, it's got the right game theory and incentive compatible design aspects to it, but that our staking programs also adopt that approach, which is well considered and designed appropriately and receives the feedback from the market, so that feedback loop can be factored into subsequent activities around staking programs. So that's very quickly the approach there. So I describe that because it's quite important to a point that I just mentioned, which is it's not an instant panacea that fixes everything and you just press a button and go. So we're applying the right due diligence in designing that correctly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, very in depth, and yeah, it makes sense. Everyone has done in the past kind of different kinds of staking programs, as you said, a bit with the rewards a bit higher, whatever, different kinds of ones. So yeah, it's nice to see that it's maybe a different approach and a useful approach for the capital that's there available for it. So yeah, thanks very much. I'll definitely loop back to this answer in the future when people ask it. Makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
Yeah, I have an article also that essentially articulates this. So I'll release that very shortly for the community and also for the investor community and user community at large. So it will give this kind of, hopefully give the kind of clarity that's necessary. But that was an excellent question, yes.
Yeah, who knew that the best question was when staking for once? Okay. Eric, any other questions that you've seen around the community, or should I just
Yeah, I think, that was,
jump to another topic?
That was pretty much, the one that was asked when we said that we were doing the call, and in the monthly update there was a lot of stuff in there as well. So yeah, for me, I think that was most of what came out of the chats the last few days anyway.
Mic off.
Yeah, and just speaking a bit further about what Brian just said, I think also people need to take into consideration that staking represents incentives for staking. If you were talking about staking your Fringe tokens, for example, that represents inflation on the system. And if you're talking about just issuing rewards, that represents an expense. So these programs need to be very carefully reviewed, because what you don't want to do is run out of all of your incentives or run out of all of your capital at a key moment. And the timing plays a big factor into that. But like Brian said, it's mostly, it all comes down or boils down to good design. Welcome to the people that just joined. So a couple more people join. If you want to try and jump in and ask a question, feel more than welcome to. We're always happy to talk to you guys. Also, if you're listening to this but don't really want to say anything, you can also drop a question on the chat. We're monitoring it. And yeah, aside from that, we talked about how we're increasing the support for multi-chain. in the monthly update. So I reckon to wrap up this call, it would be good to just have a couple words and speak a little bit to that. Brian, Alex, do you want to go ahead and just share any thoughts or any developments on our side when it comes to multi-chain?
Yes. Okay. So multi-chain is something that we've been working on for a little while. We've bundled the development of this together with our additional lending asset support. So there's two big changes, big roadmap items which will be released fairly shortly. We're in the process of finalizing development, and we've commenced testing, or at least initial testing, of these components. So with regard to multi-chain, the considerations are we're porting, which just means lifting and shifting, really, the platform to other EVM compatible chains, Ethereum virtual machine compatible chains. And there is, I think we've got 5 at the moment that we've been testing on. And so technically, our platform, we've been very happy with the performance of that so far, notwithstanding there's further testing that we wish to undertake. But in terms of economics, the way we need to activate each of those chains is to assess the tokens that are on those chains, determine which ones are viable collateral assets, and to ensure that we have the infrastructure in place to be able to support that. And what that refers to primarily is the Chainlink data feeds for the prices at the moment, because we're currently relying on Chainlink price feeds. And so we just need to ensure that those are all in place. We have dialogue underway with some of the chains who are considering offering grants to Fringe Finance to help bootstrap liquidity on the lender side. So these are good discussions that will help that process. So it's there's far more than just technically lifting and shifting our platform to those other chains. It's a matter of appropriately selecting how it gets configured with the collateral assets and other economic factors, such as bootstrapping it with various liquidity. They're the primary considerations, but that in amongst the additional support that we are adding for additional lending tokens is quite important, because USDC may not be the primary opportunity for lending as a lending token on some of those other chains. So it's quite important that we get that capability that we're building at the moment bedded down, tested, appropriately audited, and then moved to those other chains. So that's in a nutshell. Alex, did you have anything else?
Mic on.
Yeah, I mean, one exciting aspect of our multi-chain deployments is that we'll be one of the first DeFi platforms to deploy on zkSync 2.0 once it is deployed on mainnet. So that'll be quite exciting. And it could give us a kind of first mover advantage there, given that we'll be supporting a lot of collateral assets. So yeah, that's probably like one of the most interesting aspects of it, I'd say. But and also with regards to oracles on other chains, we're looking into a bunch of solutions, but basically we should really use Chainlink on a lot of them for those chains where Chainlink is deployed. And we've also come up with a solution for a way in which we can use pretty much any oracle on these other chains, allowing us to list many more collateral assets, what would be feasible without this solution. And so we'll be writing something up on this solution soon. But yeah, that's really quite exciting, because it could give us a significant advantage over other lending platforms on these other chains, especially given that a lot of the assets on these other chains are relatively small compared to those on Ethereum, given that these chains generally are smaller. And so, yeah, that's very exciting, I think.
Yeah, that's a great innovation, and that's something that will help continue to differentiate Fringe Finance from other money markets out there in the marketplace. And these different roadmap items and capabilities are really important because it further supports the other key differentiator with Fringe Finance, which is, of course, the support for a large number of collateral assets. So as we continue to roll forward with that steamroller of releasing multiple new or support for multiple new collateral assets each month, that's something that will really help the case for Fringe Finance and further differentiate it. And of course, hoping, despite the market conditions, that this makes all the difference. And certainly when market conditions are more favourable, we anticipate this being a clear differentiated in the marketplace.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it seems almost esoteric to be talking about market conditions, but our entire industry is predicated on doing things at the right time. Counts a lot more than not. So we just have to accept that that's a reality. I wanted to again ask those that just joined to, if you want to ask any questions, please go ahead. If you don't want to talk, just drop it on the chat and we'll make sure to read it. But otherwise, the Blunder, you're on. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
All good here as well.
I'm liking what I'm
Good to
hearing
hear
so far. I just had a quick question since we're on the topic of going multi-chain, whether on the staking platform, what's going to happen with fees there? Are we going to have to stake on the separate chains, or is everything going to be brought back fee-wise back to Ethereum?
The intention at this point is to support staking only on Ethereum until we further validate the security of the other chains. So it will be, I think, a slower and more piecemeal process whereby we offer staking on other chains.
But we do intend on supporting, like, at least maybe not immediately, but soon afterwards, the ability for C tokens to be staked, or like F tokens, Fringe tokens, to be staked on other chains, because as a way to incentivize lender liquidity on those chains. And so that will require the staking platform to be deployed on those other chains, because it's just kind of like an unnecessary overhead to actually try to like port those F tokens to Ethereum just in order for them to be staked. So I think that in the like medium term, we will definitely be deploying the staking platform onto at least a few other chains, and namely those that we want to incentivize lender liquidity on, which will probably not be all of them, but will be a subset of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking more long term, actually, like for like the fees on liquidation events or something like that. Are those fees going to be distributed to the current chain you're staking on, or are they going to be shared between all of them, or have you even thought that far ahead, actually?
Oh yeah. With regards to that, I think that all of the fees will be aggregated into the Fringe DAO in the long term, and then the Fringe DAO governance mechanism will decide how those are allocated. So there would be no like rule that like fees earned on one chain can only be distributed to stakers on that chain. It will be just whoever the DAO wants to distribute those fees, and of course, if they can be moved between chains quite easily, like the fee revenue. And so I think that if everyone wants to stake on Ethereum, for example, and only on Ethereum, then I suppose all the fees should be distributed only on Ethereum. So it's just going to be up to the DAO, basically. Yeah, and what makes most sense.
Have you guys been talking to any cross-chain protocols to make any of this happen, or are you guys still with Router or somebody else?
We've talked a bit to multi-chain, but initially our multi-chain, our cross-chain deployment of the Fringe platform will not involve communication between the deployments of the lending platform. That will be kind of like a phase 2 of our multi-chain deployment. Initially, we'll be deploying them as isolated instances on each of these chains, and so that we're independent. And that it simplifies a lot of the risk management, but it's definitely something we are working towards, the ability to support like cross-chain lending and borrowing, rather than lending and borrowing on each of the chains. But I still think that even deploying our Fringe platform onto these other chains is like very significant in and of itself, and I provide a lot of value to people on these chains because there actually like is a lot of capital on these chains that really cannot earn any yield due to it not being supported by any lending platforms, and it's not able to be used as a collateral asset either. And so I think that will just the ability to actually deploy our platform at all on these other chains will be like will offer a lot of value to users of those ecosystems, where there's much less much fewer lending platforms to choose from than there are on Ethereum. But yeah, we do also plan to support cross-chain communication. And there's a few bridges we're looking at, like including multi-chain. They seem to have a very good SDK we've been looking into recently. Yeah, there's a few others, but yeah, we're still kind of not completely decided on which one we'll eventually go with.
Yeah, thank you for that. Great question, Blunder. Since you're the only community member currently on, if you want to ask any further questions, please go ahead. Okay, he's not anymore speaker. Cool. So yeah, guys, I think since there are no further community questions, we can start wrapping up this conversation, and then we will be, of course, uploading it to YouTube and to other platforms and to Twitter to make sure that people that were not able to be here right now can hear it. So thanks a lot. Hopefully next time we can collect questions in advance to avoid this or arrange at a different time. So be on the lookout for that. Any parting thoughts, Brian, Alex, Eric?
Powering off. Powering on. Mic
no.
off, mic on.
It's just busy. That's all I can say.
Charging.
It's very busy. You don't want to be Brian at this point in time.
No, I love it. I love this shit.
Great to hear that.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
How about you, Alex?
I think that's pretty comprehensive. I obviously that's like I could talk for hours about this, but I think that's like probably that was pretty good coverage of the high level things we've been working on and updates. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of
All right. Well,
a lot of good stuff was talked
Go.
about here, yeah. And yeah, the passion is great, energy's great, and yeah, thanks very much.
Great, guys. See you.
Thanks, everyone.
I know we all hope that the market continues to pick up. Take care, and we'll see you on the next community call. Bye bye.
Charging battery.
Yep. Awesome.